Good afternoon, welcome to Money Tips. This is Charles Kelly. Well, lots been happening this week in the UK with the energy prices set to rise again as the energy regulator OFGEM has lifted the cap by 80%. Now this means that the government has previously capped the amount that electricity providers can charge, because of course the electricity system here is privatised. Now it used to be run by the government, and one of the conditions of privatisation was that they had a regulator called OFGEM. I'm not sure what they do, but they are set to increase wholesale prices and prices passed on to the consumer by 80% from the 1st of October. Now remember, I did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people are saying they're not going to pay, they're going to cancel their direct debits. I certainly don't recommend you do that because you could get yourself into problems and ruin your credit rating. So just be careful of that. Another aspect to this is lenders are changing the mortgage affordability calculations and the way they calculate how much they can lend somebody on a mortgage. Now, you know, when I was in mortgages, it used to be 3 times your income and you can borrow this amount, 4 times your income, someone up to 5 times income. So someone earning, I don't know, 50,000 a year could in theory get a mortgage of £250,000, and that was the way it was done. It didn't matter how much you were spending on your bills or going out or gym memberships or other things, or even loans, other loans. It didn't seem to matter to them. They just lent the money. Now they calculate things a lot different, and it's changing. They're taking all this into account, so they're taking outgoings. So I think the result of it could be that lenders will lend less to people than they were previously. And this comes with the Bank of England rulings and that sort of thing, I think to try and cut down the debt and dampen the amount of debt, because things have surged in the last couple of years. So obviously the government, the Bank of England, are a little bit nervous because we've been through this before. We've been through financial crashes before, the last one 2008, and you know, at that time they sort of stopped these self-certification mortgages, which basically meant that people could certify their own income. You know, these changes then, I mean, the changes to bills will have a knock-on effect on how much people can afford to borrow. I think as a first-time buyer, I'm not sure it's going to make much difference to the lender, but if you're a second-time buyer and you're moving and they're looking at your bills, I mean, bills are going to go up by 80%. Average bills anything from £3,000 to £5,000 a year for energy. And I spoke to one energy provider today, and they said some people's energy bills could reach £1,000 a month. These are people who've got HMOs and landlords who've got houses in multiple occupation where they include bills with the rents. Now this was fine up until a year or so ago, when bills were, I don't know, you'd say 120 a month, you know, maybe 1,500, maximum 2,000 a year for a larger house. Now you're talking about, you know, £5,000 a year. It's really ridiculous. I mean, my own property, they're asking now for £500 a month. They used to take about £150 a month from me, something like that. Now they're asking for £500 a month. It's almost not worth doing the property at all. You might as well just you know, sell it or put family in there that pays their own bill, and you get less income, but you have less hassle with all these energy providers. So that's what's happening there. The government has announced a £400 payment to help people, which should come out in October, and it should appear as a credit on your bill, and this will include landlords who pay the bills on the tenant's behalf. So it's £400. It's not, I mean, it's not going to amount to much when you think that most people's bills have risen by that amount in a month. So that would just cover 1 month's energy bill rise, the £400. But then what can the government do? I don't know. I mean, the Labour Party and the Scottish Nationals are calling on the government to do something, but you know, this is based on the wholesale prices caused by the Russian invasion, and partly caused by our strong stance against Russia to say no. I mean, Boris was over there the other day. What was he doing over there with Zelensky, getting some medal? He should be here running the country and sorting this out, not swanning off to the Ukraine, giving their support and solidarity and all that sort of thing. The Russian situation is killing the economy in the West. It's killing Germany. Germany are now telling people to wear warm clothes in winter, not to take too many showers, Yes, this is a fact. One German minister said people should use a sort of face cloth to wash themselves and avoid taking showers every day. And it's crazy. And other countries are seeing power cuts already. And in some parts of the world, there is starvation around. That there's people are going hungry at night. And the UN estimates that hundreds of millions of people will die of starvation in the next year or so. Because we're not only seeing oil prices rising, gas prices rising, we are also seeing food prices rising because of this war, which, you know, without getting political, in my opinion, could have been handled differently. Possibly could have been avoided. I'm not supporting Putin for what he did, but the West's reaction to it, all this talking tough, doesn't seem to be working. The strategy doesn't seem to be working. He's sitting back there. You know, he is a dictator, so he can't be voted out by the people. And yes, his economy is suffering as well. But I think our economy, he's got the natural resources. Russia has got, you know, the oil and the gas and minerals and this sort of thing. They've got huge, vast resources, and economic sanctions against them do not appear to be working. Plus, they've got tie-ups with China and other countries that will buy their goods anyway, regardless of Western sanctions. So the balance of power is shifting away from America's dominance to perhaps a new world of dominance from different countries. China and India are getting more powerful, and we could see a big change in the next few years. A lot of people think India could be one of the strongest economies in the world in the next 20, 30 years. We shall have to see. So getting back to what's been happening here, house prices. Let's look at house prices. House prices, according to, I did an article on this a couple of weeks ago based on the Halifax figures, but now the HMRC figures, the official figures from the lender, these are based on returns put into the HMRC on house sales. They did peak in July. We haven't got the figures for August yet, but they seem to peak in July. And I think agents now are saying that things are slowing down. Buyers are becoming more cautious. They're putting in lower offers, whereas previously the sellers could say, no, we want a higher offer. We want higher than the asking price. And they're even at one point in the lockdown putting people on a sort of a waiting list, and then they would select the buyer that they thought could go through quickest or pay the most. That is changing. The dynamics are changing. Maybe it's becoming more of a buyer's market. There's properties hanging around for longer. So let's look at how many properties were sold. 110,000 properties were sold in July, but the average is usually around 100,000. And sales in July were 33% higher than the same month last year. I think the Halifax showed a higher figure than that than last year, but that's based on their lending. These are the overall figures, because obviously a lot of people don't use a mortgage, so and they don't lend from the borrow from the Halifax. So these are the more accurate figures. So yeah, we got a few comments here from Property Mark saying that the figures show that the housing market remains stable in transactions month on month. Yeah, I mean, the people in the property business, like lenders, big estate agents, they don't want to talk the market down, because obviously if a lender talks the market down, they are putting their own security at risk. They're taking security on all these properties. So if the lender says the market's going to crash, it's going to crash, all the value of their properties would go down, and their lending book would literally be at risk. Their security has gone down. So if people start defaulting and handing in the keys, they're going to have to sort of suck it up from there. So they're not going to talk the market down, but definitely things are happening. You look at the way the economy is going. You look at small businesses, how they're suffering with all these extra charges. Something's got to give. The stock market is still going up. It did dip last week, by the way, but it's still it's still pretty stable and going up. And property transactions are still there. People are still buying, but something's got to give. We're seeing record inflation, well, not record all-time record, but certainly for the last 40 years, inflation reached double digits. Bank of England said it will go to 13% and we're going into recession. One City group predicted that inflation could reach 18%. I'm not so sure. If things slow down, then inflation will have to slow down. But in the meantime, you've got all the unions here demanding big pay rises. The rail workers have been running on and off strikes for the last few weeks. Post office have joined in. Barristers, the barristers, the legal boys are now, criminal barristers are going on strike as well. So there's lots of things happening there, and they all want pay rises that are in line with inflation. But I remember in previous decades when there was high inflation, you were not sort of, you didn't have a human right to get a pay rise in line with inflation. As an employer, if inflation goes up 10%, but my bills are going up as well, in effect my profits are going down. And then if the employees are saying, well, I want a 10% pay rise, I might say, well, I can't do it, because my bills are going up. I'm taking a pay cut and a profit cut because of bills going up and all my costs are going up. How can I then give you a 10% pay rise? But a lot of the unions are in sort of government or semi-government type of jobs where the government can just pay more, and then the government can just print the money to pay for it, or tax us to pay for civil servants or people in government related industries to earn a bit more. I know the railways are privatized, but it's heavily subsidized by the government. But I don't think all these strikes, in the past, a rail strike would bring the country to a standstill, but a lot of people are working from home now, so I don't think it's really working. Similarly, a postal strike is not going to have the effect that it did many years ago when everything comes to a standstill, because of course a lot of people are doing transactions on e-platforms, and you can e-signatures and by email obviously, and using other services to deliver mail. So the Royal Mail has not got the monopoly on deliveries in the UK. So I'm not so sure that their strike is going to have the same effect. In the past, in the 70s and 80s, unions could bring the country literally to a standstill, like no power, no electric 3-day week and all that sort of winters of discontent. But I'm not sure they have the same power now, but it's still causing a lot of disruption to businesses and to people. Now, in America, President Joe Biden is cancelling, this is a big story actually, it's not so much in the news, but he's cancelling billions of dollars of federal student loans. These are loans taken for higher education, for students going to university. Very, very expensive in the UK, 6 figures to go to most universities over there, in the US I mean. So he has taken this executive decision to cancel. He's going to cancel all of these debts to help people. Well, yeah, it's great if you're on a recipient of that generosity by him to give away taxpayers' money just like that. But how does that affect people in general? What sort of example is that setting to people to say, well, they can borrow money and someone down the line is going to cancel the debt and let them off? What about the people who've paid off their student loans or paid off half of it? And suddenly they find that people who've just got all of it to pay have had it cancelled, but they've paid theirs off. How are they going to feel? And also, what about the taxpayers? This is going to cost $300 billion. America already has a multi-trillion, I think something like $10 trillion of debt. It's just absurd. Is it 10 or 30 trillion dollars? I can't even remember. I think it's more like $30 trillion of debt. More than it's ever had, biggest debtor nation. But maybe 300 billion is just like in for a penny, in for a pound, just add another 300 billion to it. But those student loans were actually government assets. They were assets because they were bringing in income. They were money that's owed to them. So it was like an asset. They were like a bank in effect. And he's just given away 300 billion of state assets. It's almost like getting towards extreme socialism or communism, which never works. It's never worked in any country where they've tried this, because it just disincentivizes people to save and do things for themselves. So, I don't agree with it. I don't know what your views are. Let me know in the comments what you think about Joe Biden's. Obviously, if you're a student, you've just had your debt cancelled, then you go, well, hey, great, happy days. But for people who have to pay for it, I'm not so sure, and it certainly doesn't set a good example for people who borrow money. You borrow money, you should pay it back. That should be your rule. Be trustworthy. Be the type of person that pays things back. then you'll get a good credit rating, you'll be trusted, and you'll be somebody that people can lend to and will lend, because a lot of business is done on trust. A lot of joint ventures are done on trust. So do become a trustworthy, honourable person. That's part of your character building. So that's what I would recommend as my little bonus tip there. Now, with all these cost of living rises, what can you do? I mean, you can cut things down to the bone. You can cut your figures down to the bone and try and save here and there. But if you do need to learn more about money, learn how to maybe generate a second income, I'll put a link up here to some free training that I'm offering. And if you're interested in property, there's a session next Wednesday, Beginners Property Secrets. But have a look at my money course. It's a money course that will, and I put a free webinar up about it. But it's a very good way of getting control of your finances, learning how you can generate a second income. Maybe it's property, maybe not. Not everyone wants to be a landlord. And in fact, many landlords are selling up due to increased regulation, increased costs and that sort of thing. So have a look at that free training. I'll put a link up on the notes there. And in the next episode, I'll be looking at property and talking about how the rich and sometimes the famous and the royalty managed to avoid paying inheritance tax. They save billions in inheritance tax, and yet it's the people in the middle and down the lower end that don't seem to know how to get out of it and don't make the right plan. So I'll have a special interview with somebody talking about that. So thanks for listening. Do check out that free training, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks very much. Bye for now.